Kia ora. So we're moving to our first panel. The first speaker will be Minister Grigg, who's going to join us via a live feed. Then she will be followed immediately by His Excellency Lawrence Meredith. Thank you, Lawrence. And then Matt Lee, the UK Trade Counsellor. And they're all going to talk to the theme of this first session, navigating political volatility and the strategic opportunities that come with that, with a focus on business and how you can leverage the high-level work being done at the ministerial, diplomatic, negotiation level by respective governments. So I'm chairing this session. At the end of the three interventions, I will offer an opening question, and then we will open it to the floor, so you have time to get your questions ready for our three expert panellists. So I'd ask you to join with me in welcoming them now. Kia ora, Minister Grigg. Welcome. My name's Jennifer Curtin, and we're ready for you now. Thank you for your patience waiting.
Good morning, and look, thank you, Professor Curtin, and of course to all of your team at the Institute for bringing this together today and acknowledging my co-panellists. I'm sorry I'm not with you all in person, but for those who follow Parliament, we are in extended hours and sitting till midnight for the rest of the week. So we're a little bit locked into Wellington at the moment. But look, for those who don't know me, my name's Nicola. I do have the enormous privilege of being New Zealand's Minister of State for Trade and Investment. And I also hold the delegation for RCEP and the PACER Plus trade arrangements. And I know you've just heard extensive comments from Todd, who is obviously the subject matter expert in this, but I just wanted to give you a quick Cook's tour of my remit and where I'm focused. But needless to say, the last 12 months have very much been marked by turbulence and, of course, transformation of that global trade landscape. You're all invested in it and involved in it, so I'm probably not telling you anything that you don't already know. But for my part, and actually another one of my portfolios is in associate agriculture with a delegation of horticulture. So I'm very invested and involved with New Zealand's agricultural exporters. And from my travels, you know, it's very, very clear that both exporters and importers find themselves having to really think hard about the new normal and having to navigate these emerging geopolitical tensions, of course, ongoing supply chain disruptions that we saw erupt through COVID that haven't really settled, and that rise of protectionist measures. And so when I'm out and about traveling the country and meeting with these businesses, it is very, very clear how much these changes are creating significant challenges and uncertainty for them, and I think for the New Zealand public. And I know from my discussions with my overseas counterparts that their communities are facing similar pressures as well. So my focus for our panel discussion today is very much going to be on the government's trade strategy, but I did, as I said, wanted to quickly touch on my remit, but then also on my recent travel up to the East Asia Summit alongside the Prime Minister. So while we were up there, two themes came up really, really consistently. The first is very, very much the need to shore up that rules-based trading system, which Todd talked about as well. And as a part of that, it is important that we continue to grow our strong relationships with our international partners and that we all collectively continue our support for the WTO. Of course, investing in institutions like ATEPS, which is where we've classically laid the foundation for trade liberalisation and progress on those new issues. And then as well as that, we mustn't ever forget the OECD also is important and still continues an integral role. And second, that we do engage in these regional economic integration initiatives like and SPTA that Todd mentioned, PACER Plus, CP, TPP, and RCEP, and then these new and evolving innovative plurilateral arrangements like DEPA. It's really, really important that New Zealand takes practical steps to enhance and engage with cooperation and integration, and really raise that level of ambition of what we can achieve with like-minded trading partners. And the pressure, of course, is mounting. There's no denying it. It's mounting on those international rules, on what we once saw as the norm, and pressure on the institutions. And they, the reason we are mounting such a strong defence of them is that they really are the very foundation of this country's security and prosperity. We are a small island trading nation, and we must never forget that. So, but of course, we punch above our weight, and we should be really, really proud of what we do and what we've achieved. We cannot take for granted New Zealand's role as an innovator and a leader on trade. And I think here we need to acknowledge our world-class trade negotiators. The team at MFAT, Vanguard, and all of his negotiators are world-class, and they must be acknowledged for what they've achieved for Brand New Zealand and New Zealand Inc. And we need to make sure every opportunity our views are represented at the table, and I know they do that with incredible skill and talent. But of course, you sitting in the room are very important too, and we need you, and we need people like you out flying the flag for liberalised trade around the world. ATEPS has a really unique place in New Zealand's trade policy discussion. Of course, you're bringing together the business and the academics and the policymakers to share those experiences and share those ideas. And from the forums like this is where the really great special source emerges. And it's even more important during these times of uncertainty that everybody is talking about. It is through these discussions that New Zealand continues to play its role as a really staunch defender of rules-based trading systems, but also at the same time to come up with those creative ways to work on and strengthen and modernise these existing systems. We've got to do this because we've got to ensure that our exporters continue to have access to these markets to compete on a level playing field. And the reason we do that is for the growth and the betterment of New Zealand and for New Zealanders. So with that, Professor, I will close my commentary, and I look very much forward to hearing from my colleagues on the panel.
Kia ora, thank you, Minister. Do you guys want to clap now?
Thank you, you're very kind.
Ambassador Lawrence, it's your turn now.
Kia ora, everybody. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. It's actually really inspiring to be here in this, back in this beautiful whale, especially as Professor Steedman said, on a really exciting moment when you have the World Indigenous People Conference here in this city, which is, by the way, a proof that trade and economics are working well, because the price of the hotel is certainly responsive to the surge in demand. I can confirm that from last night's rather modest overhead stay and a spectacular price. So economics is alive and well, I can reassure you of that. I'd like to build on what the two ministers have said, and it's a real pleasure to be with the Honourable Nicola Grigg as well as my British colleague Matt Lee on this distinguished seminar, inspiring, and to have our friends from ASEAN with us. That's a particular welcome to you. On a day where, as Honourable Todd McClay said, our trade minister, if you like, our trade commissioner, Mara Šefčovič, who was recently in Auckland just 3 weeks ago, is over in Melbourne for a really important moment of the CPTPP. I've been practicing that. And I think it's really significant that, you know, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. You have to be clear what your vision is for the future, and the European Union is crystal clear that we would prefer tariff-free trade. We're committed to the rules-based international order. We believe in strengthening the World Trade Organization, which is, of course, under enormous pressure. But that's because, let's look at the counterfactual. If you don't have that, you have a rapid descent into something approaching a free-for-all, and that is really not in anybody's interest. And I say clearly anybody's interest. I don't feel in a position to challenge 250 years of international trade theory. I really don't think that's going to happen. You can, of course, take different policy decisions, but it's a bit like climate policy. Just because you want to pretend it's not happening doesn't stop it from happening. So it's just the same in the trade sphere as I see it. And that's why it's really important that we have this discussion today. And I think it's particularly important that we have our friends from ASEAN who represent such a significant part of the global economy and global population. And I think that, so in terms of the first point is, I'm really pleased that the European Union, New Zealand, and our friends in the United Kingdom are crystal clear that free trade is the way we want to go. Secondly, let's look at the bilateral dynamics in exactly that scenario. We've got one of the most recent free trade agreements the European Union signed and brought into force, came into force on the 1st of May 2024. And as both ministers have said, this government's committed to doubling the value of exports. So how's it going after 18 months? It's spectacular. From a New Zealand point of view, in 18 months, there's an increase of New Zealand exports of 33%. You're all good at the maths, so if you do that, you're well on target in terms of the New Zealand-EU relationship to smash the double in 10 years. And I think it will. And I think that's good because, so what's in it for the European Union? No, our trade has not immediately surged, but I don't think anybody expected it to do because we were taking tariffs off products and you had a very liberalized economy. But it's not as simple as just trading goods or even trading services. It's a broader relationship. If you invest in a strong two-way relationship, of course it intensifies the overall economic relationship. So the positive agenda is really important. And I'm going to come to not just economic security, but the whole old-fashioned concept of investing in business. You need to be here to make it work. And I think when we had the first ever European Union New Zealand Business Summit here in Tamaki Makaurau just 3 weeks ago, we have 500 people, the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, 4 ministers, our trade minister, the top of business, IKEA are going to open in this country, which is making not just Auckland, but New Zealand very excited. I can hardly say I'm amused by that, but I can't think of anything I'd rather not do on a rainy Saturday afternoon. My wife and I may disagree on this, but it is great that IKEA's open. Don't get me wrong, no, that's really important. You've got to invest in those relationships, and the investment point's also key. And I think from a European Union perspective, what I picked up from the businesses who were here, IKEA, Maersk, Airbus, all the big players were in town. Is that they're really interested in doing more in the open New Zealand economy, and that's across conversations, and I'll wrap up. So what's exciting is, of course, agriculture, agri-tech, clean tech and renewable energies, the infrastructure piece, aerospace, defense, and advanced tech and AI. And my final point is it's all about innovation. So I think we need to bring our innovative scientists. So it's great to be in the University of Auckland. We've got Horizon Europe, the world's largest research and innovation program. New Zealand's the first global partner. And it's bringing together that innovative side, dynamic side of the economy that's the way forward. And keeping open, dynamic, and innovative economies is what the European Union and New Zealand are both strongly committed to do. Thank you very much.
Kia ora. I think it's on, Matt. Just give it a shot.
Yes, perfect.
Welcome.
Great. Well, firstly, it's a privilege to be here. Thank you so much, Professor Curtis. Let me start as well by acknowledging the remarks by Minister Macleay and thanking His Excellency Lawrence Meredith and Minister Grigg for their thoughtful and insightful comments. So I'm Matt Lee. I'm the Counsellor for Trade Policy at the British Embassy in Tokyo. But in the UK government, we have a regional model overseas. So I also cover coordination of our Asia-Pacific trade policy work, working closely with my colleagues Fraser, Katrina, and Sophie at the British High Commission in Wellington and the Consulate General in Auckland. So a bit about myself. You can't tell from the accent, but I am actually also a Kiwi. I was born in Wellington, the Arrow Valley, went to nursery there, and then moved to the UK aged 4, so I'm a dual UK New Zealand national. And I entered the civil service via our fast stream. I, in fact, applied for the European fast stream. I'm a German speaker, but then the UK voted to leave the European Union, and we no longer needed such a scheme anymore. So I was sent to work at the department for exiting the European Union. We had a special department set up for that. So it wasn't quite what I was expecting, but you have to pay the rent somehow. As many of you will know, as a result of Brexit, the UK gained an independent trade policy, and that's how I got started working on trade policy. Firstly, our negotiations to leave the European Union, but then after that I joined the Department for International Trade and worked on our trade negotiations with the United States under the first Trump administration, the UK-New Zealand FTA, which we're very pleased to have negotiated, the India FTA before moving to Japan 2 years ago. And it really is such a fascinating time to be working on trade policy, whether you're working in MFAT, whether you're in business or in academia. So it's really great to be here. To offer a few thoughts on the question about navigating political volatility and the strategic opportunities, let me offer a few comments from the UK government perspective. I think firstly, I just want to unpack the challenge a bit more as well. Our Prime Minister Starmer, described what we're facing as an age of insecurity. And yes, it's about the change in US tariffs, but it's not just that. And actually, he gave a speech after the US tariffs were introduced, and he compared the shift in the global trade and economic order to one as profound as the change in the global security order after the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine. And that is the scale of the challenge that we are facing when it comes to global trade instability. And we shouldn't think that this is a temporary blip. This is here to stay. But it's not just about US tariffs. It's also trade disrupted by war, disrupted by the pandemic, disrupted by overcapacity, and the weaponization of supply chains by certain actors as well. And in this age of instability and insecurity, the UK government sees a role for us to provide certainty and stability as much as we can, both domestically and overseas. And the two key tenets of this are our modern industrial strategy and our trade strategy, which we launched earlier this summer. Our industrial strategy lays out very clearly where the UK government is going to be prioritising its efforts. 8 priority sectors representing about 30% of the UK economy. We have a 10-year plan to support those sectors and to attract more foreign direct investment. We want the UK to be the easiest, cheapest place to invest and more profitable as well. And so we've introduced various measures from cutting energy costs, access to finance, and making sure we have the skills and the right sort of innovation to support those 8 priority sectors, providing that clarity in our domestic framework. And then the trade strategy is about providing stability in our overseas trading relationships. And very quickly after the US tariffs were introduced, Prime Minister Starmer moved to conclude trade negotiations with the US to stabilize the relationship there, to protect our automotive industry, to reset our trading relationship with the European Union, and to sign a trade deal with India, which opens up significant opportunities for UK services and goods exporters. But it's not just about the bilateral trade deals. We, like the European Union, like New Zealand, are committed to upholding and strengthening the wider rules-based trading system. In this age where the US's stated policy is to reshore and is skeptical of the role of the World Trade Organization, we still believe that there are many, many countries, as we heard from Minister Macleay, Minister Grigg, and from Lawrence, many countries that still depend on the free, open, transparent trading system for their national prosperity, the UK included. And the UK, as a G7 nation, feels this responsibility to help champion the rules-based trading system and to work with partners, like-minded partners, to keep that system going. So you'll see us playing a big leading role on WTO reform. But also, like New Zealand, we see plurilateral agreements as an important way forwards to make new rules. We want to implement the existing program of plurilaterals that are being discussed in Geneva, e-commerce agreement and so on, but we want to explore what future opportunities there are to agree rules amongst coalitions of the willing, so to speak, of countries who want to make rules together. And there was a really interesting article by Mike Froman, the former USTR, about open plurilateralism, which really caught the eyes of British ministers and policymakers. And I just want to recognise at this point as well New Zealand's really forward-leaning and creative thinking in this space. You know, we have lots of shared interests with New Zealand to cooperate on plurilateral rulemaking. CPTPP, another very important pillar of our trade strategy, and again another initiative that New Zealand was very important to founding with the P4 initially, the revival of the TPP negotiations. As many of you will know, it's a much higher standards agreement and more trade liberalising than the WTO baseline. And the UK government sees expansion and upgrade of the CPTPP agreement as a really important way to strengthen the wider rules-based system, to expand the orbit of high standards trade. And it's very fitting that the ministerial meeting in Melbourne is taking place later this week. And we're very pleased as well that CPTPP is now working geostrategically with the European Union to see how we can work together to support the rules-based system, support the plurilateral rulemaking initiatives that we have. Combined, we are 33% of global GDP. We have significant economic influence in the way that the rules are made. And then finally, I just want to say something about bilateral opportunities as well. The UK is a big country, 6th largest economy in the world, but we are under no illusions that we can do this alone when it comes to providing certainty and stability. We have to work with trusted partners like New Zealand, like the European Union, like Japan, Australia. And one interesting example of how we've been approaching things slightly differently in the past year, I'll give an example from our work in Japan. We have been exploring the idea of industrial strategy partnership. And this is the idea that, both the UK and Japan and other countries are looking for resilience, to build resilience in certain strategic sectors. But we can't do this alone. So how can we work out where we are good at science, maybe bad at maths, but whereas, Japan is good at maths and bad at science, how can we complement each other's economic strengths and help to build mutual resilience with those trusted partners? And so I think I would say the UK offer to the world is that we are a trusted, reliable partner. We want to trade and invest more with other trusted partners, and we hope that is an appealing message to New Zealand at this time as well. We also have bilateral free trade agreements. We want to see more trade and investment as a result of that. We're really pleased with the utilisation figures so far. I heard from the team yesterday we're over 80% utilisation, which is really, really incredible for a free trade agreement. And let's see that continue and see more trade and investment as a result. Maybe then just to conclude, thank you again to the University of Auckland and MFAT for convening this very important conference. New Zealand really is a world leader when it comes to thinking about trade policy because it brings so many innovative ideas to the table. The UK government is very keen to engage, to work with you, but also to learn from you. We're really, really pleased to be sponsoring this event, and I'm also personally looking forward to learning lots from everyone here today. So thank you very much.
Kia ora. So, Minister, as part of this conversation, just to let the audience know that I'm going to ask one question. It's kind of a double-barreled, and each of our panellists are going to do a rapid-fire answer to it, and then we're going to open it up to the floor. And we have about 25 minutes. But, Minister, I understand if Cabinet calls. So just wave. I can't see you very well, but the audience can. So if you do have to depart rapidly, just wave to them and they'll tell me. So, for the three of you, in what way are the bilateral and multilateral agreements that you've been talking about, as well as the long-standing and new regional arrangements that we're seeing, able to promote the range of businesses that and support the range of businesses that make up the New Zealand export sector in both goods and services? In other words, if you had to give us one tangible takeaway that you want businesses looking for trade and export security in the current geopolitical environment to have from you, what would that be? What's the one tangible takeaway? Minister, I'm going to give the floor to you.
I'm going first. Okay, thank you. Look, I think, it's everybody has acknowledged that trade arrangements are critical to the success of businesses and the success of nations. And I think as a government, we've been very, very focused on enhancing the existing and traditional trade relationships and being really, really ambitious about securing new ones and further liberalising new and emerging ones. So for businesses, and I think that's really important as a politician, is we've always got to think back to, this is actually about real businesses and real people and improving the living standards for real people in this country. So enhanced market access is critical to those businesses. We all know FTAs reduce the tariffs and make New Zealand goods and services more competitive. It's about diversifying those markets as well. We've all talked about the benefit of these regional and multilateral frameworks, and everyone's holding CPTPP up in shining lights as the exemplar of what we should be aiming for. Those help New Zealand exporters avoid the over-reliance on single markets, because things can turn on a dime with political shifts, changes of government, new and emerging. It's a very competitive world out there as well. And, we as New Zealanders have to really, really stay present and front of mind within these markets. But over and above all of that, and again, we've all talked about geopolitical tensions and the shifts away from the norms and the traditions and the standards, it's about creating that predictability and certainty. And so I've been very privileged to be able to travel with the Prime Minister on multiple occasions now on these trade missions that he carries out, particularly up into the ASEAN region and into a lot of those countries, and acknowledging all of our members there today and officials that are there today in the room. This is a really, really exciting region for us. And we know we have a lot to bring to the people in that region, but equally, trade is about two-way, and we know that there's enormous benefit and gain that New Zealanders can get from products and services coming back to New Zealand. So we're really, streamlining those compliance and standards is something that the New Zealand businesses that we've taken on these trade missions into market have really appreciated, and knowing that framework is sitting behind them, and then when they go up into market and meet potential suppliers and potential in-market partners, that they know that framework sits in behind them. So as and when they can secure those relationships and secure those deals, there is going to be the legal, I keep saying framework, I'm sorry to use the same word 3 times now, but that it sits in behind them to support their business. And then again, we've all talked about MTBs, and we've all talked about supporting resilient supply chains. Those, I think, are the most critical factors that these trade arrangements bring to New Zealand businesses. And in terms of the tangibles, the takeaways, it goes without saying that being able to access these markets and create these new relationships, again, sheets back to what I mentioned at the outset. It's about, we've got to remember, this is actually about people. It's about improving their businesses and improving their wealth and improving their lives. And so that is why we do it. And of course, as a New Zealand government, we've got all sorts of tools and resources available to exporters. We've set up an agency called Invest NZ for investment wanting to come back into New Zealand, but equally we have a government agency called New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, which is about supporting businesses and exporters here domiciled in New Zealand to get their product offshore and to grow their business internationally. We've also got all sorts of things like tariff finder, resources. We have an export help desk. We've got NTB resolution channels. So all of those get stood up because of the FTA network that we have around the world.
Kia ora, thank you. Ambassador.
Thank you very much. Well, our message from the European Union to New Zealand business is really simple and clear. There's never been a higher premium on predictability and investing in trusted partners than today. The EU is one of the world's largest democratic single markets, built over 70 years. And look at the numbers. In 18 months, increase of 33%, 2 billion extra in the New Zealand coffers. That's enormous. Look across the board by all means and tell me where that's going better. Then look at your current relationships with the European Union, because this is not a format in which I can do my EU quiz, although at the break, if anybody's interested, I'll happily do it. But I bet you know some parts of Europe, but I'm pretty sure you don't know all parts of Europe. And if you make money in one part of Europe in a single market, it's a pretty good guarantee you can make it in the other parts. You just need to invest in building those relationships. We have a network of 28 ambassadors, because I come for free, to help you build those relationships. And I'll give you one quick example, a couple actually, rapidly. One, I was at the fantastic Royal Agricultural Show in Canterbury at the weekend, with pretty exotic weather as well, by the way. We have 4,000 people through our little stand. It's called Cheese Diplomacy. We hand out free cubes of cheese, and you get an awful lot of people if you do that. I recommend it. Public diplomacy, unorthodox but effective. The conversation that stuck with me was, we had a little map and people could put magnets on the thing, and then one guy immediately put Lithuania in the right place. I thought, wow. He said, yeah, I've just come back from my Lithuanian supplier. This was a farmer in the Canterbury Plains who got tractors from Lithuania. And I'm like, there are relationships you don't imagine exist, and people are out there hustling and finding parts of Europe which are great, reliable supply chains. And the other example I want to give is from earlier this week, where the Prime Minister's space prizes from a totally different sector was won by the fantastic Stefan Powell from Dawn Aerospace, which is a half Netherlands, half Kiwi company. And that shows that the cutting edge of innovation and beyond the frontiers of the planet, New Zealand and the European Union are working together. So whether it's in the classic agri-tech, which for a very long time will be the mainstay of our economic relationship, let's be clear, or at the cutting edge with Horizon Europe support, we can do cool things together. Get out there, come and talk to us, and let's do more business together. Thank you.
Matt?
Great. Well, maybe I'll start with the UK-New Zealand FCA in the first instance. As I mentioned earlier, we're really happy that we have this high standards FCA, which has already been utilised so much by businesses. But the UK is a really natural trading partner for New Zealand. We have a shared language, shared history, and we really hope to see more trade and investment as a result of our free trade agreements. And the ambassador mentioned cheese. UK also has lots of very, very good cheese. I think we have more varieties. It's very not widely known, but we have more varieties of cheese than the French. So please enjoy British cheese as well as cheese from the European Union. But speaking a bit more broadly about how these bilateral regional agreements can benefit exporters in New Zealand and elsewhere, I find myself in strong agreement with what the Minister was saying. It's about market access, it's about providing stability and certainty. We've recently signed this trade deal with India, and we know that New Zealand is negotiating a trade agreement with India as well. Quite transformational, the results of some of these negotiations. We're going to see tariffs on British whiskey and gin cut from 150% to 40% over 10 years. That's really transformational for our whiskey industry. The largest export market in the world is India. And then, you look at other goods as well, and that also applies. So real opportunities, genuine opportunities that can be opened up by these trade agreements, which our governments are pursuing. And then on stability as well, I think now more so than ever, it's really clear how important it is to have stable trading frameworks in place, even if there's no new market access. Actually, just knowing what the rules of trade are and knowing that they aren't going to change is incredibly important for UK businesses, and I'm sure for New Zealand businesses as well. Maybe just one extra point I'll just add is around the interaction between these regional agreements and bilateral agreements, because this is something that we get asked by UK businesses a lot, and I'm sure applies to businesses elsewhere in the world. If we have a bilateral trade deal with New Zealand and we're also in CPTPP, why do we have these two different arrangements? What's the benefits? And actually, what I'd say is having multiple arrangements gives you more choice. for our bilateral deals with the UK and other countries, we tend to have these rules of origin, which mean that we can have more inputs from the European Union and still qualify for tariffs. Whereas if you're in CPTPP, you're allowed to have more inputs from CPTPP countries and qualify for tariffs. So if you're a business, that gives you a choice. You can still qualify for tariffs by having your supply chains with one model, in the UK case with the European Union, or qualify for tariffs with tariff preferences through CPTPP and a different supply chain. So actually there's quite a interesting benefit there in the choice that it offers to businesses. So I wouldn't say, just because there's a bilateral, you should ignore the regional side as well. But I really echo the Minister's words that ultimately what matters is making sure that businesses use these agreements. These are just kind of pieces of paper if they're not used. And I would say, it's really can be quite challenging to translate difficult legalistic trade policy into tangible business benefits and how to understand them. But it is incumbent on the government to help do that. We in the UK have an FTA utilisation team, a specific team, 25 people set up to precisely help with this. But chambers of commerce and businesses, helping each other to understand the opportunities and feeding back to the governments as well about what you need, what's not working, because ultimately we need to be responding to what the business needs are in order to help you succeed with exporting. Thank you.
Kia ora. So now it's your turn. We have roving mic person, I think. So is one of my team, could you come up and be a roving mic? Christian, do you want to do this? Come up and walk the mic around the room. And while Christian's coming up, maybe I could see a show of hands of who would like. Oh gosh, all right. So we'll start with Felicity and then go to Peter.
Thank you. Somebody's got to start.
Yes.
So I'm happy to do that for you, Jen.
Thank you.
I'm just interested to hear from our international partners about your experience and your reflections on negotiating framework arrangements with the US. The New Zealand government has made the decision, which in my group we support, to engage, continue with the US, but not to enter into a formal negotiation at this time. So I'm interested, because we've made different decisions, what your takeaways are from that and what that experience has been like and what we can learn from it.
So just for the rest of you, Felicity is Executive Director of the New Zealand International Business Forum.
Excellent question. Obviously, if you take the European Union together with the United States, it represents 1.7 trillion. So the numbers are off the scale, and it's in that context. And I'd like to echo what the minister said. These are challenging times, but for our businesses, what's most important is to get as much predictability as possible. And these are tough choices and, of course, much debated, and I'm sure we'll debate it throughout the day. But that's the line that we're going down. And, you've got to put that together with what I said in the opening remarks, namely, the European Union is crystal clear that we want tariff-free trade. But the President of the United States is going down a different track. We need stability for the massive business that is transatlantic between the European Union and New Zealand. And we have gone to find as much predictability and the best arrangements we could secure. And that's where we are. It's not a fixed position. I'm fairly clear about that. And we had Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič, who's currently heading to Melbourne for the CPTPP with Honourable Todd McClay, and that's a really important dialogue. And to our ASEAN friends, I also want to say, an example of how clear we are on our approach is that we continue to negotiate. We've concluded negotiations with Indonesia. We're ongoing, for example, with the Philippines and Thailand. So we are in global outreach for those who want to do more free trade with the European Union. In an arrangement where the President's been clear he has a different approach, we had to approach it differently, and we tried to secure as much predictability as possible. I hope that's clear. Thank you.
So the UK was the first country to conclude a trade negotiation with the United States, and it's an incredibly important market for us. It's our single largest bilateral trading partner. The way we approached our trade negotiation was in two parts. So the agreement that we struck in May was focused on stabilizing the trading relationship with the United States, and in particular on saving our automotive industry. You know, we were weeks away from seeing Jaguar Land Rover having to close plants in the UK, and thousands upon thousands of job losses. And so we took a targeted approach to start with addressing the pressing issues, and we were very pleased to agree a 10% tariff on automotives with a quota, which helped to save the Jaguar Land Rover in the UK. But then in the same trade deal, we said we would continue our negotiations on a broader, more comprehensive number of issues, which we're continuing now to negotiate with USTR on. So we're looking at where we can address the reciprocal tariffs in some areas. We're looking at how we can deepen our digital trade, commitments on services, where we can cooperate on economic security. And so we've had 2 or 3 rounds of negotiations with USTR on those sorts of issues now. I think we acknowledge that these wider talks, they will bring about hopefully wider advantages with our trade with the United States. We don't have a preferential trading arrangement with the United States, our largest trading partner, so we are very hopeful about the opportunities that this provides, but recognizing that will take longer, we focused first on the issues that needed to be addressed more immediately and to provide a kind of stable trading framework for UK businesses. So hopefully that kind of gives you some insights into how we've been thinking about the negotiations with the US. I think I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Great. Peter. Thank you.
Thanks. So Peter Draper with the University of Adelaide in Australia. There's plenty to agree with what the panel said, particularly the emphasis on storing up the multilateral and rules-based trading system, certainly something that Australia would strongly support. However, both countries or groups, the EU and the UK, have concluded these bilateral deals with the US that fundamentally violate a core WTO principle, which is the most favoured nation principle. I understand the reasons why you did that, because you faced a crisis, but at the same time, we're looking to shore up the system while undermining it. So how do we square that circle moving forward?
Fully understand your point. I think we just have to be clear. The United States made a move to which each player in the world, it's one of the world's largest economies, needs to respond. This is not a move that we wanted to happen, but it's a move to which we need to react. And in that bilateral dynamic with the United States taking those moves, as I've just said, the European Union's response was obviously consultation among our 27 member states with our business community, we decided that the least worst course of action was to go for as much predictability as was possible, as rapidly as possible, because it was not a stable position either, let's remember. So we needed to secure stability and predictability for our businesses. That was absolutely paramount. And of course, it's much debated. In parallel, outside that relationship, we have been equally clear that we strongly believe in the World Trade Organization. We believe in reform and improvement, not abandonment. And I think it's absolutely, and so we are being as consistent as possible in the current context. And I think the fact that our commissioner is for the second time in this region in 3 weeks shows he gets on incredibly well with the Honourable Todd McClay. They're both, if I had to say, if you take Winnie the Pooh, they're both Tigger. They both bounce up and down with such incredible energy that they need a raft of officials because they wear them out incredibly quickly. Because they're up and down in India, they're in ASEAN, and that shows how important the hustle is. And our commitment, as we just said, as Matt said, 33%, world trade in CPTPP plus the EU closer dialogue. We're doing our best to shore up the rules-based international order in the face of massive turbulence. Thank you.
And maybe I just add to that. The first thing I'd say is the UK intends to negotiate a comprehensive trade deal with the United States covering substantively all trade, goods and services, and that is still under negotiation. So we are very mindful of our WTO commitments and are trying as best as possible to stick to them. But as Lawrence says, I think we have to deal with the world as it is, and when the United States is taking the decisions that it has, we need to respond accordingly, both in terms of how we try to keep the United States engaged in the multilateral trading system. I don't think it benefits anyone for the US to withdraw further, but also then how can we work with partners like New Zealand, Australia, the European Union to try and shore up the rest of the global trading system to reform it. So I would say, it's the world is difficult, and we have to try to stick to the principles as much as possible, but sometimes reality, we have to deal with the reality that we face.
Kia ora. So we have our minister on screen, so I'd like to privilege the person next question to include her. So anybody want to offer an intervention? Sarah, thank you.
Thank you all. Really interesting panel. Minister, I'm interested, you're out and about speaking to businesses and New Zealanders all the time. How much does this global trading environment come up in your discussions with ordinary Kiwis, and how much are they following the ups and downs of this year in particular?
It's a really good question. Obviously, I speak with exporters a lot. I know your question's about ordinary Kiwis, but I can answer in two parts a little. The thing about trade is politicians, I think, in previous years gone by, haven't done a very good job at communicating to, your words, ordinary Kiwis about the impacts, the benefits that enhanced and increased trade relationships can have in terms of that flow-on effect. So we've had to think really hard and be really careful about how we articulate the benefits of these new and enhanced trade arrangements and how they will benefit all New Zealanders, be it increased FDI or be it, agricultural exports are set to, they just hit 60 billion and the projections are rising. And, we need to be really much more diligent at communicating to the population that flow-on effect lifts net wealth, that it gives the government the ability to build the schools and the roads and the hospitals that everyday New Zealanders want and justifiably deserve. So that's something that we're thinking about really hard, as in when we go out on these trade missions and the Prime Minister or the Trade Minister are in various different dialogues and forums overseas, as to how that translates to improving the lives of New Zealanders. So that's a big work on for us. The other one, when I talk to exporters, it's obviously their bread and butter, so they're highly attuned to the ups and downs and the increasing tensions and the complications and the NTBs. As I said earlier, I'm the minister responsible for horticulture. Talk to onion growers about the NTBs that keep getting thrown up by Indonesia. That at one point last year was costing them between $1 and $2 million a week. So they have real impacts on the daily lives of these people and their businesses. So again, our job is to be deeply engaged with our exporters to understand every single day about any trade issues that they may be experiencing. And then, of course, we, pick up the phone to MFAT or MPI, and those marvellous people get these things sorted. But our job is to be the communicators on the ground. That's not the job of a trade official. So yeah, I'm sorry, I'm answering your question in two parts. I think there's two different audiences there. There's the exporter audience that we talk to, and then there is the everyday New Zealander, and the different conversations, but actually leading to the same outcome.
Kia ora. So the next questions, and probably the last, is with Stephanie Honey, who's sitting way over here, Crystal. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Hello, Stephanie Honey. I'm an international trade policy consultant. Thanks very much for the interesting presentations from all three of you. Something that seems to have slipped off the radar a little bit in the trade policy conversation from its previously very prominent position is, I guess, what you could describe as a sort of progressive trade agenda around inclusion and sustainability. So I'd be interested in all three perspectives on, pardon me, where you see those issues landing now. I mean, I was in Korea for APEC a few weeks ago. It was very clear that the United States is not a fan of DEI, pardon me, or the words climate change or gender in a sort of trade context. Do we still have the ability to take those issues forward in the sort of international setting? Thanks.
Kia ora, thanks, Steph. Matt, maybe I'll come to you first.
Happy to. So from the UK perspective, this still matters very much to us. In fact, in our trade strategy, we have an entire chapter dedicated to what we're doing to promote sustainable trade, whether that's continuing to fight for progressive environment chapters in our trade deals and environment commitments. We're reviewing our responsible business conduct guidelines. But also, maybe to give a practical example of how I don't think there's a conflict between progressive trade policy and economic growth, we in the UK negotiate women's economic empowerment chapters in our FTAs. I think we have one with New Zealand, if I'm not mistaken, but we also have one with Japan. And actually, if you think about what's happening in the Japanese economy, there is women are experiencing fewer of the economic opportunities. They're creating new businesses, but they're struggling to scale up. They're struggling to find export opportunities. And we want to help those female businesses scale up, and to do so by coming to trade and invest with the United Kingdom. I think I saw a statistic about how if female-run companies in the UK scaled up at the same rate as male-run companies, our economy would be £250 billion bigger. So yes, this is a moral issue about gender equality, but also it's an economic issue. If we can raise the rate of economic benefits from free trade agreements, then that will deliver economic growth. So I think kind of remembering to think about these issues also in the lens of how they support economic growth. The same applies for trade and the environment. It doesn't help anyone if we're undercutting environmental regulations in order to promote growth. So I think seeing things through that lens, I think also means that we don't have to make this trade-off between growth, so to speak, or trade, hard trade and progressive values.
Kia ora. Lawrence.
3 points. Firstly, the European Union is globally leading on climate, clean tech and renewable energies, and we see, as we discussed at the first ever European Union New Zealand Business Summit, huge opportunities in that context in both directions in the EU-New Zealand relationship. Could give you an example of a fantastic company, Nilo, that does green glue and secured IKEA as its main global partner. So, with IKEA opening here, I mean, there's huge opportunities, and green is a business opportunity. Number 2, we have the World Indigenous People Conference going on right now. What better signal of inclusivity? The European Union has cut 76 trade agreements. I think the first one ever to have an Indigenous people chapter is the one with New Zealand. And the Maori economy is the fastest growing part, 126 billion. We're open for business with Maori, as with all of New Zealand. And thirdly, we celebrated 25 years of the EU having the motto of unity and diversity. we're founded on the importance of openness, and it's really important that in the EU that you can move forward with equal economic opportunities, whatever your sexual orientation, gender, or race. And let's put that really crystal clear. Thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. Minister.
Well, I think the points I was going to raise have been articulated very well by Matt and Lawrence. But, New Zealand, we're really proud of our track record in both of these areas about, inclusion and sustainability. And our arrangements with both the EU and the UK, I think, speak to that, as well as the Indigenous peoples that Lawrence mentioned. The reason we have placed a precedence on those previous in recent times is that the Indigenous peoples piece, there is massive growth in New Zealand in the Māori economy and indeed the Māori export economy. So that is I don't want to use the term sector, but I can't think of a better one right now. But that is an area that will have potential for even bigger growth going forward. Sustainability is also a key area of growth for us. I mentioned those trade missions that I've been up on previously. That is by far and away the greatest area of interest and future interest from those, particularly ASEAN region nations, is in clean tech, renewable energies, and all of those things that we in New Zealand take for granted are really, really exciting to the Southeast Asian region. So there's, again, huge potential there. And then for the women's piece, I'm also the Minister for Women, and it is the conversation or the question I get asked the most is how do we lift and how do we amplify opportunities for startup capital and investment in female entrepreneurs. And it is a vexed question because it is an international problem. But, and it's a great quote, Matt, I must write down that stat about, the potential growth to the UK economy if you had the same volumes of investment in your women founders, it was in the Japan market, same would apply to here in New Zealand. It is a vexed question. I suppose as leaders in both the trade and the political arenas, we need to be talking about it because we need to ensure that VCs are aware of the massive talent and potential that our female entrepreneurs and exporters have, and that these people who are by and large clever people should be aware of where they should be shifting their money to.
Kia ora. Well, that brings us to the end of our first session, and we're going to take a well-deserved break for morning tea and networking. But before we do that, can I ask you to join with me in thanking our inspiring 3 opening panellists. Thank you, Minister. We have a wee gift for you as we're giving out our gifts to our other panellists, so we'll send it down to Welly with an MFAT official for you. Kia ora. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.